Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a practice that is literally as old as human history, but it's also one of the biggest wellness trends right now: fasting. I mean, you hear about it everywhere, right? But what does the science really say is happening inside our bodies and our brains when we choose to stop eating for a bit? Let's get into it. So, what's the deal here? Is fasting just some ancient ritual that's gotten a slick modern makeover? Or is it a genuine science backed health hack? That's really the big question we're going to tackle today. We're going to dig into the research to separate the facts from the hype.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what fasting even is. Then, we'll look at what it does to your brain and then to your body. After that, we'll explore its potential role in disease, and we'll wrap it all up with the really crucial stuff, the nuance and the risks involved.
All right, first things first, we have to define our terms. Because, the word fasting gets thrown around a lot, but it covers a huge range of different practices. It's not as simple as just skipping breakfast. To get the science, we've got to be specific.
So the term you'll probably hear the most is intermittent fasting, or IF. Now, the key thing to get about IF is that it's not about what you eat, it's all about when you eat. It's simply a pattern, a cycle between eating and voluntarily not eating. And under that big IF umbrella, wow, the methods are super varied. You've got time-restricted eating, that's like the super popular 16-8 method. Then there's alternate day fasting, which is exactly what it sounds like. And of course, there are deeply important cultural practices like Ramadan, which involves no food or water from sunrise to sunset. You even have medical fasting before an operation. See? They're all different. And just so you know, this is not some niche thing. To give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, around 2 billion people around the world practice Ramadan fasting every single year. That's a massive, real-world group that gives researchers a unique window into the effects of this specific type of fasting. Okay, so we've got the what down. Now let's get to the really juicy part. What's happening up in your brain? The whole idea that not eating could somehow make you sharper feels a bit weird, right? But is it true? Can you really starve your stomach to feed your mind? Well, some of the research here is honestly pretty incredible. There are studies suggesting that fasting can ramp up a protein called BDNF. The best way to think of BDNF is like miracle grow for your brain cells. It helps you learn and make new memories. Other studies point to better neuroplasticity, that's your brain's amazing ability to rewire itself, and maybe even some long-term protective effects. But, and this is a really big but, here's where things get a bit murky. When scientists studied a group of physicians working during Ramadan, that's a super demanding, high-stakes job, they found no significant impact on their thinking skills. It kind of suggests that in a real-world stress test, the effects might not be so clear-cut. And just to make things even more complicated, some research actually hints that for older adults, a longer fast overnight might be linked to worse cognitive performance. So yeah, it's definitely not a fasting is good for your brain story. The type of fast, your age, your health, it all matters. A lot. Okay, let's shift gears from the head to the rest of the body. What's the deal with fasting and our physical performance, those pesky inflammation levels, and our overall metabolism? Now, this is one of the most consistent findings we see. A lot of studies show fasting can dial down key markers of inflammation in the body. You can think of these markers as little red flags for stress and damage. So lowering them is a really big deal, because we know that long-term low-grade inflammation is a major bad guy behind a ton of chronic diseases. But when we look at athletic performance, it is a total mixed bag. The results are kind of all over the place. You've got one study showing a drop in performance for young female handball players during Ramadan, but then another, looking at male distance runners, found they held up just fine. The big takeaway seems to be that it really depends on the sport, the person, and how well you manage everything else, like sleep and nutrition. This all leads us to our next big topic, the potential for fasting to help manage or even treat diseases. This is where a ton of the really cutting-edge research is happening right now. Just look at this list. The potential applications are massive. Scientists are looking into everything, from whether it can make chemotherapy more effective, to helping with blood sugar control, heart health, even autoimmune diseases like MS. But, and this is so important, we have to remember a lot of this is still in the very early stages of research. And to show you how this plays out in the real world, check this out. One study found that patients with type 1 diabetes, which is a serious condition that needs constant management, fasted for an average of 22 days during Ramadan. This just goes to show that people with serious health conditions do fast, but it absolutely has to be done with close medical supervision. But, and you're probably sensing the theme by now, it is never that simple. For example, one study on rats with type 2 diabetes found that IF actually made their fasting blood sugar go up at first. It's just another powerful reminder that our bodies can respond in complex and sometimes unexpected ways. All right, all this back and forth brings us to our final and honestly our most important section. This is all about the nuance and the risk. Because if there is one single thing to take away from all this research, it's that fasting is not a one-size-fits-all solution. For some groups, fasting without a doctor's okay isn't just a bad idea. It can be genuinely dangerous. We're talking about pregnant women, where it's been linked to lower birth weights. We're talking about kids who need fuel for growth. And for anyone with a chronic condition like kidney disease or diabetes, going without food can pose some really serious health risks that have to be managed by a professional. In fact, this is taken so seriously that for high-risk folks, like people with diabetes who want to fast for religious reasons, there are now official medical guidelines. They recommend this whole formal process where doctors assess the risk, categorize it, give the patient a ton of education, and make a personalized plan to keep them safe. That really tells you how seriously the risks need to be taken. So where does all this leave us? Well, fasting is clearly a powerful tool. It can have major effects, from cooling inflammation to changing how our brain works. But it's also clear that it's not some magic bullet. The results are deeply personal and super complex. Which really just leaves us with the next big question for science. How do we finally figure out exactly who benefits, who doesn't, and why?